Welcome to Stranded Sports Live. Two content items in like 3 days here at Stranded Sports. Really killing it lately after our hiatus, if you will, Tyler.
Yeah, crazy. It was a long hiatus where it's had some stuff going on for all of us. I mean, getting some professional stuff done and doing other stuff, but still here, still ready to go, still ready to talk about Major League Baseball, or if we can call it that right now.
The baseball league, as some might call it. But Tyler, our MLB guy, Tyler, host of Stranded at Second, if that continues, we'll see. There needs to be baseball before that can continue. So
Right.
that's a very fair point. But Tyler, we knew this was coming. It felt like it was inevitable. And now it's here. And now the big question is, how do we fix what has happened? What is the next step? How do we come to a resolution? It seems like they're pretty far off. What do you make of this? Briefly to start, what do you make of this situation right now?
Well, it starts with the connection, and that is they need to sit down for more than 10 minutes to talk to each other and actually, agree to some terms because the MLBPA obviously wants to have certain things in Major League Baseball next season that the owners probably don't agree with. Rob Manfred definitely doesn't agree with because we all know his deal. And that's basically where it currently stands. I mean, I think they negotiated for all of like 30 seconds the other day, and they were just like, all right, blocking out time. And then it's kind of hilarious what they've done after that. They've got rid of all the players' images on MLB.com. There's no mention of any current players on MLB.com and like articles and stuff. So it's sort of just purgatory right now for baseball, and they got to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah, I definitely was wondering what all the silhouettes were yesterday, briefly. And then I heard what it was about, and I said, there's no way they just wiped everything. And you're right, there's nothing on MLB.com right now other than articles about who can get into the Hall of Fame, who had the sexiest swing in all of baseball, and just very weird, generic, like filler articles. It almost feels like, obviously not filler articles,
Well,
but
yeah.
that fun little like rankings content that maybe if when we were doing blogging frequently, it would be like, okay, this is cheap content we can throw up. It'll probably get some people talking, get some people angry. It's like all
Yeah.
articles like that, and nothing about current players.
There's only one player that made it through the wipe away of
I saw Buster
MLB.
Posey,
Yeah, Buster Posey. He's retired, so I guess he's not currently still a player. But
not a guy in the MLB PA.
yeah, he rises from the ashes like the vigilante we all wanted. No, it's weird. It's kind of weird, but yeah, like you said, all the filler content is kind of funny to see. My favorite part was the Cardinals talking about their promotions for the upcoming season, and it's like the first 25,000 fans will get a replica jersey of the Cardinals third baseman, not Nolan Arenado, who it actually
Right.
is. Cardinals third baseman, or you'll get like a signed glove by the Cardinals catcher, Yadier Molina, but it's actually the Cardinals catcher on the promotions page. It's kind of funny to see and then the players have all gone in solidarity and changed their avatars on Twitter to the silhouettes. So at least they're having fun with it. I do think there will be a resolution within the next month or two. I don't
You
think
think
it's
it
going
can
to
happen
be.
that quick?
Yeah, I think both sides want to play it, and I'm going to be angry if there's if I have to miss any time of seeing Max Scherzer as a New York Met.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, and there's still a ton of guys that need to sign places. Like Carlos Correa is still on the market, but it's weird. It's a weird time to be a baseball fan. I'll tell you that.
Well, the really big bummer about it all, other than the obvious, is that free agency was starting off really hot.
Yeah,
We saw Javi Baez go to the Tigers. As you said, Scherzer went to the Mets, and just a myriad of guys going different places, going to be donning new colors next season if there is a next season. And I think it was a really good way to maybe get some people into it, get people fired up about baseball in the midst of, all these other sports in the middle of their season now, especially the NFL, the most popular sport in America. And baseball, the World Series just ended, obviously, not too long ago, and it's kind of in its dormant stage. But free agency really got going with a bang, and everything kind of just stopped dead in its tracks, I suppose, right as some of those big deals started to get signed.
yeah, and I think that was sort of what was happening. Like their players knew that there was going to be a lockout, so they wanted to get their deals done as soon as possible. Like I saw Marcus Stroman. It was tweeted that he had interest in joining the Cubs. dude hopped on a plane and then signed a contract like hours before the lockout happened and announced that he was joining the Cubs. Former Mets pitcher Marcus Stroman. He's it's just weird, and yeah, like you said, a flurry of moves over the past like 2 weeks. Some like crazy big contracts, some awesome signings, and some places like the Rangers got Marcus Semien and Corey Seager, which locked out their middle infield for the next 10 years or so, which is crazy.
Right, and, we've seen some steps in the right direction in the grand scheme of MLB. We heard about, might have been a couple months ago. Everything's a blur timeline-wise at this point, but we heard about finally providing housing for minor league players, things of that nature, some small moves being made, and obviously, I think the big points during this lockout are playoff size, which I can't remember which side fought for it, but division realignment for more playoff teams, I should say. Obviously, salary caps, salary floors, a big discussion, and then how many years of service you need to have before you can test the waters of free agency. Some very big, very broad, controversial topics. Maybe a universal DH gets thrown in there in the midst of all this very important stuff. Not to say that's not important, but this much bigger picture stuff, perhaps. What do you think you want to see come out of all of this?
There's really only two things that I want to see come out of this, and I will say this initially. I am not a fan of the realignment whatsoever. I think that the divisions are fine as they are. Yeah, you're going to have some weak divisions like the AL Central and stuff like that every year, but they've been pretty much the same since the 90s when they had the wild card added and when they had the the expansion teams. Like I don't know when the last expansion team was. I think it was 2000 or 97 or something like that. But I don't like the realignment, but I do want to see the universal DH, and I do want to see the expanded playoffs because it gives more chances to see, maybe smaller market teams on a bit of a broader stage. Now, I completely hated the ones that were in 2020, the stupid 2020 expanded playoffs. That didn't seem real. That didn't seem real to me, but I think, two extra teams feels kind of right in the playoffs maybe for both sides. But I think having the chance for an under 500 team to make the playoffs is kind of dumb. But universal DH, it means so well for players that are very good like Yordan Alvarez, but can't play an outfield position. And then universal DH, even though there's already a DH in the AL. Never mind. I meant more guys like Dom Smith on the Mets, who is a great player, but obviously blocked at first base by Pete Alonso, and in left field he's all right, but not great. Gives him a chance to play. So I want to see the universal DH and the expanded playoffs. Everything else is sort of just like, don't really know.
Do you want a salary floor? Do you think teams like Baltimore and Pittsburgh need to open up?
Yeah, I think that's one that I'm sort of on the fence on because it shows which teams are going to be competitive and which not, but also you feel for the fans of teams like Baltimore and Pittsburgh who are in the mid to late 2010s or the mid 2010s were the cream of the crop, in the league. And then all of a sudden, when they don't pan out as well as they wanted to, everything just, flies away and like the Orioles. And I think that if there's a salary floor, like obviously the teams are going to be competitive in a few years, but if there's a salary floor, it leaves opportunities for bigger players to sign in places that were not even expected for them to sign into. Because now, the teams that are going to be on every player, it's going to be the Mets, it's going to be the Yankees, the Dodgers, and Angels. All the big market teams are going to be in on almost every player. Now we're seeing Texas sort of swing that way, which is cool. But yeah, and now some of the big market teams like the Yankees and Dodgers are losing out. So maybe there's a bit of a shifting of the gear, which maybe we'll see after this.
Right, and I think every other North American sport really that's big has implemented some sort of salary cap. I personally am all for the floor and the cap, obviously. I think those go hand in hand. But I think definitely me and Ethan talked about this on our latest podcast, which will be the last video on here if you're interested, or obviously podcast providers. I just think, baseball is different in the way you groom that home talent, you build them up, but it takes a long time. And for me, especially, it's hard to get invested in the season knowing that your team doesn't have a shot. In the NFL, maybe if you're a Jaguars fan, okay, yeah, this might not go so well for us for a couple years, but you get those draft pieces and they're immediately there right away. You can immediately see the changing of the guard starting to take form in the Trevor Lawrences. They don't play the minors for 2 or 3 years and then show up. And then you're like, oh, he's doing well these first 2 weeks. Oh, they figured out he can't hit off speed. He's hitting 230. That was a lot of fun. So I like maybe forcing some of the owners to open their pocketbooks a little more, open the checkbook, add a couple zeros to the end of some things, take some gambles. I like that. I think the big thing that they need to do, which I don't know if this happens in when you're making up a CBA, but the marketing of the game, which we've talked about basically since Stranded Sports started. Dejan Kovacevic here in Pittsburgh wrote an open letter basically about what needs to be changed. And he said you could put Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in the middle of Market Square and maybe a couple people would recognize them.
Yeah.
And I think that hits the nail right on the head. I think the marketing for the MLB has been abysmal, and I think it needs to change. And again, this is exactly what I said when Ethan was here. Trevor Bauer knew how to market things, and unfortunately, it looks like he has turned out to be a bad human being. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty, but some very serious accusations against him. We want to make it clear that until he is found, deemed that he wasn't a bad person, we're going to assume for now that he did those things and not shine too much of a light on him. But he knew how to market the game, he knew how to market himself. And we saw how some players were saying, we don't want to be in your vlogs, get me out of here. And there's a whole thing. But I think the sport needed more of that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate the pioneer of that turned out to not be a good person from the looks of it. What do you make of the game in terms of marketability, and what do you think players or the league as a whole could implement that would kind of help that? Hopefully that's not too much of a stump question because I know there's a million things, but what are the big things?
Start showcasing smaller market teams on the primetime games. That's the main issue. Yeah, I love to see the Mets play the Phillies or the Mets and the Yankees in primetime games, but also, why not put a random Detroit Tigers and Oakland Athletics game on primetime TV? It's serving the fans better that can't maybe see those teams. Also, blackout restrictions are horrible. There's certain places in the United States where you're blacked out from like 6 or 7 teams, and that just can't happen. Like where I'm from in Delaware, I'm blacked out from the Phillies, the Nationals, and the Mets, the Yankees, and the Orioles, which is kind of weird. I'm not even that close to New York. And yeah, you can say Phillies, all right, they're within 45 minutes, but everybody else is, more than 2 hours away. I'm not actually blacked out from the Mets and Yankees. I just wanted to sort of feed my narrative there. But definitely Nationals, Orioles, and Phillies are all blacked out from where I am. And that's where all the local fan bases are. You can't block them out from the local fan bases and if you have the MLB Network package, obviously you can watch every game. But teams that, you can't see, like there's a location in Iowa where it's like the Cubs, Cardinals, White Sox, all the Royals, all those teams in the Midwest, you just can't watch. And it's annoying. But I think primetime games in different locations than New York, LA, Texas, stuff like that, it'll better serve the fans. And that starts with that, and then marketing the players way better.
Exactly. I think there's so many personalities in this league, and the old guard kind of tries to push them down, not to completely crap on the old guard, because I think baseball does a very honorable job of, recognizing its past and its legends and the traditions of the game. But at some point you need to learn and adapt, and it's getting to the point where you're wondering if they've already blown it. One thing that's been talked about is the lockout of 94, 95, and people saying the game's never recovered even from that lockout. They needed steroid, filled guys to hit home runs to save the sport. Do you agree with that? And do you think this lockout is, detrimental in terms of damage, or do you think it's just a small bump in the road?
I have a feeling it's a small bump in the road, but if it extends, it definitely will be pretty damaged because it's sort of baseball's starting to sort of, get back to where it was back in the 2000s with the steroid era. But then, all of a sudden, this thing comes out where they're using 2 different baseballs this season where you're like, okay, why is this happening? And, stuff like that. It can only be bad for baseball if they lock out past April, which really would be tough because you have all these new guys in new places, like we've said. You have all these fans that are, fresh in the game after the last couple of years with these, talents like Acuna and Tatis Jr., all no-name player and no-name player having
the shortstop for the Braves,
shortstop for the Padres, and left field, having all this impact on the game with their personalities. It's getting kids into the game more. It's getting more people to watch the games. Obviously, I watch more games than the average person probably does. But you even said in the past, like you're starting to get back into it because of some of the guys that you're seeing out there. Like, back when you were a kid, obviously it was a lot of fun to watch. And then, when the team starts to play a little bit worse, you get out of it and then you get back into it and you're sort of hooked on it. And that's sort of how I followed. But I think, it can only be, like you said, detrimental if they extends beyond, the regular season.
I saw a solid tweet. I wish I had it screen grabbed so you could put it on here. But I think you need StreamYard Premium for that. So,
Cool.
But if you recall, when Barry Bonds wasn't in MLB Baseball 2000 or MVP Baseball 2005, or maybe it was 2004.
He was he wasn't in MLB The Show either, ever.
They had the legendary John Dowd fill in for him, and he had all of Barry Bonds' stats, so he was really good, but he wasn't real. And someone said he's about to be the 2022 MVP.
Yeah, on MLB The Show, he was Reggie Stucker. And he was like,
I did not know that one.
And he, when he was in free agency, he would get like a ridiculously lucrative deal from like the Rockies or something. He'd hit like 90 home runs in a year. But yeah, that it can't. I don't see it being good for baseball if it extends beyond April or March. One thing I would like to see them try to do, maybe less spring training games. Obviously, spring training is cool, but I don't need to see 30 spring training games of no-name guys going out there and doing it. See 15, put all your teams in there, put all your good guys in there, get them ready, and then get right into the season.
Right. My other favorite tweet was, I can't wait to buy this game. And when you make a player on Road to the Show, it's Joe Random is his default name. And it was MLB The Joe 2022. And him just taking a huge cut, like just completely like one-handed big swing. So I'm glad to see they're having fun with it. It's a lot more fun than the MLB's actual marketing department right now, which is sad to say, but that's the truth. Tyler, any final thoughts here? I'm glad we got to pick your brain for a little bit. Any final thoughts as we head into the next chapter, hopefully, of what this lockout becomes?
I can't believe MLB left me as a Mets fan on a cliffhanger after, Canna, Escobar, Marte, and Scherzer all signed, and then all of a sudden we're in a lockout. But I do hope it gets the resolution it deserves soon. Baseball is probably going to look completely different next year. I don't want a shortened season because we already had to deal with that in 2020, and that, doesn't even feel like a season to me anymore. I just think that there should be a resolution soon, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. I think you said the best there. We need a resolution. I think we need it quickly. If they lose games, it's going to be really damaging to the sport as a whole, and I don't think the sport has many fans that they can afford to lose at this point. We'll be providing you updates throughout the season, the off season, depending on what old Tyler finds out when he graduates here. But of course, stranded at second, love to pick that up, get that up on a consistent basis with Tyler there, and hopefully I can join him for a few. Well, I'm in charge, so I can when I want to. But yeah, definitely hope we have some baseball to talk about on there as the season hopefully starts. But for now, we'll wait and see just like everybody else. This has been Stranded Sports Live. I'm Nick. That's Tyler. It's noon right now, and no one's really watching, but hopefully you watched this in the past. Or in the future, I should say, when this is just a regular video. So thank you for watching. Tyler, thanks for joining. This is a long outro, and now we're going to wrap it up. We'll see you later.